The night was colder than it had any right to be, the kind of cold that pressed through thin jackets, biting at skin, turning breath into fog. Turner had just finished his last shift of the day, mopping polished floors that never stayed clean and emptying trash bins filled by men in tailored suits who didn't know his name. He was tired, his back stiff, his hands rough from years of work. All he wanted was to get home, check on his daughter Lily, and make her the grilled cheese she always asked for when he came through the door. But fate had other plans. At the corner of 5th and Holloway, where the streetlights flickered weakly and the alleys always smelled of damp concrete, he heard it. Soft, broken sobs. He stopped, tightening his grip on the handle of his old mop cart, scanning the shadows. There she was. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7, sat curled on the curb, knees hugged to her chest. Her shoes were too thin, her coat torn at the sleeve. Her hair was matted with rain, and her small body shook as though every drop of cold was breaking her in half. Turner's heart clenched. He knew that look, the hollow eyes, the silent pleading. He'd seen it once before, years ago, when he'd first taken Lily home alone, a widower with nothing but a baby in his arms and a grief he couldn't name. He crouched low, voice quiet but steady. "Hey there, kiddo. Where's your family?" The girl only shook her head, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. Turner pulled off his jacket, draping it over her tiny shoulders. She flinched at first, then sank into its warmth like she hadn't felt safe in days. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "Papa?" The word shattered him. He wasn't her father. She didn't even know his name. But in that moment, something in the way she said it, small, broken, desperate, told Turner that she needed him to be. And be. Before he could even think about what tomorrow would bring, Turner lifted her into his arms. "Don't worry, little one," he murmured, holding her close against the storm. "I've got you now." The walk back to Turner's apartment was longer than usual. The girl clung to him tightly, her tiny fingers knotted in the fabric of his shirt, as if letting go meant vanishing forever. Every step, Turner felt the weight of her fear and the heavier weight of what it meant to take her in. At the apartment door, Lily was already waiting. She always knew when her dad's shift ended, always listened for his boots on the stairs. But tonight, when he pushed the door open, she froze at the sight of the bundled figure in his arms. "Daddy? Who's that?" Her wide eyes blinked between Turner and the stranger. Turner set the girl gently on the worn couch, keeping his voice calm. "Sweetheart, this is... well, I don't know her name yet. But she was out in the cold. Alone." The little girl wouldn't meet Lily's gaze. She just stared at her own shoes, shivering beneath Turner's oversized jacket. Lily, only 9 but already carrying her father's quiet strength, fetched a blanket from her room. She draped it over the girl without hesitation. "She can use this one. It's my favorite, but it's warm." For the first time, the lost child looked up. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Thank you." Turner's chest tightened. That voice, it was the first trace of trust, fragile and flickering like a candle. After warming her hands with a mug of cocoa, he crouched again. "Can you tell us your name, little one?" The girl hesitated, then answered softly, "Emily." Lily smiled. "Hi, Emily. I'm Lily. If you want, you can share my room tonight." Emily's head tilted, uncertain. Then, as though testing the word on her tongue, she whispered again, "Papa." Lily's eyes darted to her father, confused but not unkind. Too, Werner met her gaze, steady. "She's scared, Lil, for now. Maybe we just let her call me that." And without another word, Lily nodded. That night, as Turner watched the two girls curl up together, beneath the same blanket, he realized something had shifted. The apartment was still small, the bills still stacked high, and the world outside still merciless. But for the first time in years, the silence in his home wasn't heavy. It was filled with breathing, with warmth, with the faintest hint of family. Morning light slipped through the blinds, painting the small apartment in streaks of gold. Turner stirred from the recliner. He'd stayed there all night, half sleeping, half listening for the slightest sound from the girls' room. When he peeked in, he saw them. Lily, tangled in her quilt, and Emily curled beside her, face relaxed for the first time since he'd found her. For one fragile moment, Turner let himself smile. But peace never lasted long in his world. By mid-morning, Turner left for his shift at the high-rise downtown. The janitor's cart squeaked as he pushed it across the polished marble floors, blending into the background as always. Men in suits strode past without a glance. Women in heels clicked by, barely noticing the man scrubbing the baseboards. Until he overheard them. Near the elevator, two executives spoke in hushed, urgent tones. Little girl's gone missing. Big scandal. Rich man's child vanished last night. Police are keeping it quiet, but they'll turn the city upside down to find her. Turner's hand froze on the mop handle. His pulse thudded in his ears. A child. Missing. Last night. He swallowed hard, forcing his face blank. He pushed the cart down the hall as if nothing had shifted inside him, but every step grew heavier. At lunch, while the others gathered in the break room, Turner slipped outside, phone in hand. He scrolled through the local headlines until he found it. Daughter of influential CEO reported missing. Authorities urge public vigilance. A grainy photo filled the screen. A small girl with familiar eyes. Emile. The phone almost slipped from his hand. Turner stared, heart pounding. She wasn't just lost. She wasn't just alone. She was someone's daughter, someone powerful, someone rich, someone who would not stop searching. And he knew exactly what that meant. So far, Emily had found safety in his home, but if the wrong people came knocking, safety could vanish as quickly as it appeared. That evening, when he walked through the door, Lily ran to hug him, but Emily lingered behind her. She looked at him with quiet eyes, as though she already sensed the truth. "Papa," she whispered, "you're not going to send me back, are you?" Turner's chest ached. He didn't answer right away. He just knelt, pulling both girls close, and prayed silently, for strength, for wisdom, for time. Because he knew the storm was coming. The knock came just after dusk. Hard, sharp. Not the kind of knock neighbors used. Turner stiffened where he sat at the kitchen table, bills scattered in front of him, untouched. Lily and Emily were in the bedroom whispering to each other, their voices soft against the hum of the radiator. The knock came again, louder. Turner rose slowly, every muscle tense. He opened the door a crack. Two men stood in the hallway, suits, pressed and dark, their shoes too clean for this part of town. One held a folded photo, the other, broader, kept his hand in his coat pocket like he was gripping something he didn't want Turner to see. "Evening," the tall one said. His tone was polite, but cold. "We're looking for a little girl, about this high." He lifted his palm to chest level and held out the photo. Emily's photo. Turner kept his face blank. "Lots of kids around this building," he said flatly. The man studied him, searching his eyes for a crack. "This one isn't just any kid. She belongs to someone very important, someone who doesn't appreciate her being misplaced." The word belongs twisted in Turner's gut. Behind him, the floor creaked. Emily had come out of the room, blankets still draped around her shoulders. Her eyes locked on the men, and her body trembled. Turner shifted instantly, stepping between her and the doorway. Back inside Emily. His voice was steady, protective. The men's expressions changed at the name. "So she is here." Turner's jaw tightened. He didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it. He just stood tall, filling the frame of the door. "She's safe here," he said finally, his tone low, certain. "Safer than she was wherever you're taking her back to." The taller man smirked faintly. "That's not your decision, janitor. You mop floors. You don't decide where this girl lives." Turner's fists clenched at his sides, but his voice stayed even. "She called me Papa. That's enough for me." The men exchanged a glance. "We'll be back," the broad one muttered, and they turned, footsteps echoing down the stairwell. When Turner shut the door, Emily was clutching Lily's hand, eyes wide and wet. "Papa, they'll take me." He knelt, pulling both girls close, pressing their heads against his chest. "Not while I'm breathing," he whispered, and in that moment, Turner knew. This wasn't just about shelter anymore. This was war. Sleep didn't come that night. Not for Turner, not for Emily, and not for Lily. The knock on the door lingered in their ears like thunder before a storm. Turner sat by the window, watching the street below. Every passing car made his pulse spike. He knew men like that didn't just disappear. They circled, they waited, they pressed until something broke. By dawn, he had made a decision. He couldn't do this alone. After walking the girls to school, Emily clinging to Lily's side, refusing to let go until Turner promised he'd be back, he took a different route. Not to the building he cleaned, but to a small diner on the edge of downtown. Detective Raul Mendoza was already there, coffee in hand, badge tucked away under a faded leather jacket. They had served together once, not in the military, but in the same trenches of poverty. Raul had found a way out into law enforcement. Turner, well, he was still mopping floors. Raul raised an eyebrow as Turner slid into the booth. "You look like hell. Feel worse," Turner muttered. They didn't waste time with pleasantries. Turner leaned in, voice low. "There's a girl, young. I found her alone 2 nights ago. Her name's Emily, and now men in suits are knocking at my door." Raoul's easy demeanor shifted. He set the mug down. "Emily?" His eyes narrowed. "The missing girl, CEO Dalton's daughter." Turner's chest tightened at the name. Dalton. He'd heard it whispered in every corner of the city. Money, influence, power so deep it choked the air. "She called me Papa, Raoul," Turner said. His voice cracked despite himself. "She doesn't want to go back, and if you'd seen her eyes, you'd know why." Raoul exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. "You're asking me to go against Dalton. That's not just risky, Turner. That's suicide." "Then help me another way," Turner pressed. "I don't care if you put me on a list, or hide her name, or give me a place to run. I can't hand her back to them." Raoul studied him for a long moment, the hum of the diner filling the silence. Finally, he slid a scrap of paper across the table. An address. "Safe House," he said. "Old friend of mine. Off the books. You take her there tonight. No one will find her for a while." Turner clenched the paper in his hand like it was the only lifeline left. "Thank you." Raoul's gaze hardened. "Be careful, Turner. Men like Dalton don't forgive, and they don't forget." Turner walked back into the morning light with a new weight in his pocket and a promise burning in his chest. If Dalton wanted Emily back, he'd have to tear her from Turner's hands. The apartment was too quiet that evening. Turner moved through it with slow, deliberate steps, pulling out a worn duffel bag from the closet. He began folding clothes, his, Lily's, and now Emily's. Small sweaters Lily had outgrown, socks that didn't quite match, a blanket Emily had started to cling to like it was a shield. Every item slipped into the bag felt heavier than the last. Lily sat cross-legged on the bed watching him. She was sharp enough to know something was wrong. "Daddy," she asked softly, "are we leaving?" Turner zipped the bag halfway, pausing. "Just for a little while, sweetheart. Somewhere safer." "Because of those men?" He met her gaze and nodded. There was no use hiding it. Emily was curled up beside Lily, knees drawn to her chest. She hadn't spoken much since the knock, but now her voice broke the silence, so soft Turner almost missed it. "They'll find me," she whispered. "They always do." Turner crouched down, leveling his eyes with hers. "Not this time. Not while I'm here." His hand rested gently over hers, rough and steady. "You called me Papa, Emily. That means I don't walk away. Not ever." Her eyes shimmered. She didn't speak again, but for the first time, she leaned into his chest when he lifted her up, like she was starting to believe him. As night fell, Turner double-checked the locks, then sat with the girls on the couch. The small TV buzzed faintly in the corner, but his eyes weren't on it. He was listening, for footsteps on the stairwell, for the whisper of danger outside the thin walls. Across town, another man was listening too. CEO Richard Dalton sat behind a mahogany desk, fingers steepled, jaw hard. The police report lay open in front of him. His daughter's photo, clipped to the top, stared back at him. "You're telling me," he said to the man across from him, "that a janitor, is keeping her from me?" The sweet man swallowed. "Yes, sir. He's refusing to cooperate. The girl, she calls him Papa." Dalton's lips curled in disdain. "Ridiculous. She's mine, my blood. And no floor scrubbing, nobody is going to change that." His hand slammed on the desk, rattling the crystal glass beside him. "Find him. Find her. I don't care what it takes." Back in the apartment, Turner pulled the duffel close, the girls already half asleep against his shoulders. He knew they'd have to move before dawn. But as he closed his eyes, one truth settled in his chest like fire. The fight wasn't just about keeping Emily safe anymore. It was about standing against everything Dalton's power represented. And Turner was ready. Turner woke before the first hint of dawn. The apartment still smelled faintly of last night's stew, but underneath lingered something sharper, unease. He moved quietly, careful not to wake Lily or Emily, both curled on the couch beneath the same quilt. The duffel was already packed. He slung it over his shoulder and crouched, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. She stirred, but didn't wake. Emily clutched Lily's hand in her sleep, her face buried against the blanket. Turner hesitated. He wasn't a man who ran. Years of cleaning buildings where other men left their dirt had taught him patience, endurance. But this was different. This was survival. By the time the sun bled into the sky, Turner had both girls bundled up and walking quietly at his sides. They slipped down the back stairwell, past peeling paint and flickering lights, into the chill morning air. The city was just waking. Street vendors set up their carts, the smell of fried dough mixing with exhaust. Turner flagged down a bus, heading toward the industrial edge of town. He paid in cash, ushered the girls inside, and sat near the back. Emily pressed her face against the window, silent. Lily leaned close to Wade. "Isper, Daddy, where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," he said simply. "A friend's place. Trust me." But Turner's eyes never left the reflection in the glass, scanning, waiting. Half an hour later, he spotted it, a black SUV, tinted windows following two cars behind the bus. His jaw tightened. Dalton's men were faster than he'd hoped. The bus jolted to a stop. Turner grabbed the duffel, scooped Emily into his arms, and nodded to Lily. "Stay close, no matter what." They slipped off into the crowd, weaving through a market square. Turner kept moving, his steps steady but quick. Behind him, the SUV door opened. Two men stepped out, suits too crisp for this side of town. "Papa?" Emily's voice trembled against his shoulder. He shifted her weight, lowering his head so she could hear him over the noise. "I've got you. Don't look back." The alley ahead narrowed, sunlight cutting sharp across brick. Turner ducked into it, his boots echoing on concrete. Lily's smaller steps pounded close behind. The men shouted, their footsteps followed. Turner's lungs burned, but he didn't slow. At the far end of the alley, a rusted steel door stood half open, a flicker of light spilling from inside. A voice, gruff but familiar, called out, "Turner, over here." Relief slammed through him. He shoved Lily forward first, then ducked in with Emily in his arms. The door clanged shut just as footsteps thundered past outside. Inside stood Joe Martinez, an old co-worker, broad-shouldered, his hands scarred from years of factory work. His eyes swept over the girls, then back to Turner. "You weren't kidding," Joe muttered. "Dalton's men are everywhere. You're going to need more than a mop handle to fight him off." Turner set Emily down gently, her small fingers still gripping his sleeve. He straightened, shoulders squared, voice low but unyielding. Then I'll find whatever it takes. Outside, the black SUV idled. The men hadn't given up. They were circling, patient, waiting for their moment. Turner knew the reprieve was only temporary. The real storm was still ahead. The warehouse smelled of oil and rust, a forgotten place where machines once roared and men worked until their backs broke. Now it was just shadows, silence, and the faint buzz of a single hanging bulb. Joe locked the steel door behind them, his jaw set. You've got half the city against you, Turner. Dalton owns the cops, the lawyers, the judges, hell, even the school board. If he wants this little girl back under his thumb, he'll make it happen. Emily shrank closer to Turner, her eyes wide, her hands gripping his sleeve. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the fear. Turner rested a hand on her head, steady, protective. I don't care who Dalton owns, Turner said quietly. He doesn't own her. Not anymore. Joe studied him, the deep lines in his face carved by years of labor. You've always been stubborn, but this, you're up against a man who'll bury you without getting his hands dirty. Turner opened the duffel, pulling out what little he had. Spare clothes, a couple cans of food, a flashlight. Pathetic compared to the empire Dalton controlled. But then Lily knelt by Emily, showing her how to play with the worn deck of cards they carried everywhere. The two girls giggled softly, their heads bent together like sisters. That sound, light, unbroken, gave Turner something Dalton could never touch. We can't hide forever, Joe said, pacing. Dalton's already tightening the noose. His men are offering rewards, paying folks to give up your location. And if that doesn't work, he'll call the cops. Say you kidnapped her. The words landed heavy. Turner hadn't let himself think that far. What do you suggest? Turner asked. Joe stopped, his fists curling. Fight smart. Not with your hands, with proof. Dalton built his fortune on fraud and fear. I've seen the books. Double numbers, missing invoices. If you can expose him, he won't just lose Emily, he'll lose everything. Near's chest tightened. He was just a janitor. His life was floors and buckets, not numbers and scandals. But Emily's small hand slipped into his, trusting, wordless. He looked at Joe and nodded once. Then we find the proof. Joe exhaled, almost relieved. There's a man in the city, an old accountant who used to work for Dalton. If anyone knows where the bodies are buried, it's him. But he's scared, won't talk to anyone, unless he knows you'll protect him. Turner squared his shoulders. Then that's what I'll do. Protect him, like I protect her. Emily tugged on his sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. Papa, are they coming? Turner crouched down, his eyes meeting hers. He forced calm into his voice, steady as stone. Not tonight, little one. Tonight, you're safe. But as the warehouse lights flickered and the rumble of the black SUV echoed faintly outside, Turner knew safety was fragile. The next step meant war, not with fists, but with truth, and truth was far more dangerous. The city rose like a wall of glass and steel, foreign to Turner's calloused hands and quiet ways. He drove the old pickup through narrow streets, headlights carving shadows along alleys where the forgotten lived. Beside him, Emily leaned against his arm, asleep, her small breaths steady. Lily sat on the other side, humming softly to keep herself calm. Joe had given him the address scribbled on a torn envelope. 7th floor, Jefferson Building. Ask for Miller. The words seemed simple, but nothing about this felt simple. Turner parked 2 blocks away. His instincts told him not to get too close. Too many eyes, too many ways Dalton's reach could find them. Stay close to me, he said as he helped both girls out. His voice was firm but quiet, like stone against the wind. Lily slipped her hand into his, Emily clutching his sleeve tight. Together, they crossed into the heart of Dalton's empire. Inside the Jefferson Building, the elevator groaned and clattered as it carried them upward. Turner's reflection in the metal doors looked like a stranger, dark circles under his eyes, hair unkempt, shoulders tight from weeks of carrying more than any man should. When the doors opened, they stepped into a dim hallway lined with closed offices. At the far end, a door bore a fading nameplate, Harold Miller, Accounting Services. Turner knocked once, a shuffling inside, a chain sliding, then the door cracked open, revealing a frail man with thick glasses and a nervous twitch in his hands. "Who sent you?" Miller's voice shook. "Joe," Turner said. "He said you could help us." Miller's eyes darted to the girls, then back to Turner. "You shouldn't be here. If Dalton finds out, he already knows," Turner interrupted, his tone flat but calm. "And he's coming for her." He shifted Emily forward slightly, letting the man see her frightened face. "If you know anything that can stop him, now's the time." Miller hesitated, breathing quick. Then, with a resigned sigh, he unchained the door. "Come in, but don't touch the blinds." The office was cluttered, papers stacked in uneven towers, ledgers spread across the desk. Miller shuffled to a filing cabinet, his hands trembling. "Dalton thinks he's clever," Miller muttered. "But greed leaves a trail. Fake invoices, shell companies, offshore transfers. It's all here, enough to bury him." He tapped the drawer. "But if I hand this over, my life isn't worth a dime." Turner stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then let me carry that risk. He's already after me, after her. We don't need safe. We need truth." Emily tugged at Turner's sleeve. "Papa," she whispered, "someone's outside." Turner froze. The hum of the city filtered through the walls, then a sound too sharp to ignore. Boots on concrete, deliberate, closing in. Miller's face went pale. "You brought them here?" "No," Turner said, moving to the window. He pulled the blinds just enough to see the dark SUV parked across the street. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the bee, wielding like hunters scenting blood. Lily's breath caught. Emily clung tighter. Turner closed the blinds, his jaw hardening. "They're not here for papers. They're here for her." Miller's hands shook as he pulled the ledger free, thrusting it at Turner. "Take it. Get her out. If you fall, all of this dies with you." Turner grabbed the book, tucking it under his arm. Then he crouched before the girls, his voice low, controlled. "Stay behind me, no matter what." The pounding on the office door began a moment later, rattling the frame. Dalton's men had arrived. The first blow to the office door splintered the wood. Emily whimpered, clinging to Turner's arm. Lily pressed against the wall, eyes wide, her young face pale with fear. Turner steadied his breath. He had no weapon, just his fists, his body, and the will to protect. He glanced at Miller. "Is there another way out?" Miller shook his head. "Fire escape. 2 floors down. But you'll never make it carrying." The second blow cracked the doorframe. Turner didn't wait. He scooped Emily into one arm, reached for Lily's hand with the other, and barked to Miller, "Stay low. Don't open that door." The third strike burst the lock. The office door slammed open, and Dalton's men poured in, 3 of them, thick-shouldered, eyes cold. "Hand her over," the tallest growled, his gaze fixed on Emily. "No one needs to get hurt." Turner stepped forward, shielding both girls behind him. His voice was low, gravel steady. "She's not yours. She's not his, and she'll never be." One man lunged. Turner's elbow met his jaw, sending him crashing into the filing cabinet. Another swung, a fist like a hammer, but Turner ducked, drove his shoulder into the man's ribs, and felt the air leave him in a sharp grunt. The last man reached for Emily. Turner roared, twisting, slamming the attacker against the desk so hard the ledger spilled open across the floor. Pages of Dalton's crime scattered like a storm of paper, evidence fluttering everywhere. Miller gaped at the mess, but Turner didn't stop. He shoved the third man back, then mankered Lily forward. "Run!" They bolted into the hall, Turner carrying Emily, Lily clutching his shirt. The stairwell loomed ahead. Behind them, the men stumbled to their feet, shouts echoing down the corridor. 2 flights down, Turner spotted the fire escape window. He kicked it open, glass shattering into the night. Cold air rushed in. He lifted Emily through, helped Lily climb out, and then dropped down after them, landing hard but steady. The alley reeked of oil and trash, but freedom was near. Tires screeched from the street, Dalton's SUV cutting them off. More men spilled out, blocking the way. Turner tightened his grip on the girls. His chest heaved, his body screamed, but his eyes burned with something unbreakable. "You're not taking them," he growled. Then, Sirens. Red and blue lights tore through the night. Squad cars roared in, doors flying open, officers flooding the alley. At their head, Detective Ramirez raised a badge. "Dalton's finished," she barked. "We've got the evidence. Stand down." Dalton's men froze, caught in the sudden blaze of law and justice. One by one, they lowered their weapons. The SUV reversed, retreating into the dark. Turner collapsed to his knees, holding Emily close. Lily pressed against his side. For the first time in weeks, his lungs filled with something more than fear. Relief. Ramirez approached, crouching. "You did good, Turner. Real good. You saved her." Emily looked up at him, tears streaking her cheeks. In the chaos of lights and voices, she whispered, barely audible, "Papa, you didn't let them take me." Turner's throat tightened. He pulled both girls close, his rough hands trembling as he held them. Not then. Not ever. The city roared around them, police sirens, men shouting, but in that circle of his arms, there was only stillness. The janitor, the forgotten man, had stood against the richest and most ruthless, and in the end it wasn't wealth or power that triumphed, it was the promise of a father's love.